Oh, God, this is going to be so good. Tucker Carlson went from being the most popular news broadcaster in the country and an incredibly important asset to the growing American fascist movement to literally broadcasting 10-minute videos on Twitter. Tucker Carlson officially went from the guy who was at the top of the leaderboard to someone who has less prominence than me. Okay, someone who's doing something that is even a lower budget production than your favorite Twitch streamer, Hasanabi. Okay, like Twitter is probably one of the lower ends of posting. That's precisely the reason why some of the, best Twitter posters, quote unquote, will oftentimes try to turn those Twitter posts into like Ko-Fi subscriptions, Substack subscriptions, or even in the unique case, Twitch streaming. Right? Or podcasts, as a matter of fact. That's why it is like, it's not just like a little downgrade. It's like a major downgrade. Okay. It's multiple layers down. That's where Tucker Carlson's at. I just need you to understand that real quick before we watch this video.
Somebody blew up the Kakhovka Dam in southern Ukraine. The rushing wall of water wiped out entire villages, destroyed a critical hydropower plant, and as of tonight puts the largest nuclear reactor in Europe in danger of melting down. So if this was intentional, it was not a military tactic, it was an act of terrorism. The question is, who did it? Well, let's see. The Kakhovka Dam was effectively Russian. It was built by the Russian government. It currently sits in Russian-controlled territory. The dam's reservoir supplies water to Crimea, which has been, for the last 240 years, home of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. Blowing up the dam may be bad for Ukraine, but it hurts Russia more. And for precisely that reason, the Ukrainian government has considered destroying it. In December, the Washington Post quoted a Ukrainian general saying his men had fired American-made rockets.
I'm so glad Tucker Carlson is back to talk about riveting political commentary. What a wonderful utilization for the first episode. Like, who is this for, my man? Like, what do you think? Is he gonna get a fucking RT slot? Like, what's happening?
At the dam's floodgate as a test strike. So really, once the facts start coming in, it becomes much less of a mystery what might have happened to the dam. Any fair person would conclude that the Ukrainians probably blew it up, just as you would assume they blew up Nord Stream, the Russian natural gas pipeline, last fall. And in fact, the Ukrainians did do that, as we now know. It's not like Vladimir Putin is anxious to wage war on himself. Oh, but that's...
I can't think of anything that's like less relevant to like the American domestic market's interests than fucking woke beer until now. Okay. I covered this entire thing for hours today because, I'm filling 8 fucking hours of content and there's a lot of weird nerds in this community that love when I talk about this shit. But when you're Tucker Carlson, like, I don't understand why your comeback stream or your comeback 10-minute video is almost exclusively on a story that is like interesting for what? Like some of the most relentless fucking nerds. Either they're the NATO nerds, love NATO, and they're prominent on Twitter, or they're the Russia has done nothing wrong. They're actually killing all the Nazis and also simultaneously defending themselves from Western moral decay. Like, these guys are fucking extremely online and also completely insane, okay? Like, on both sides. I don't really understand why he's covering the story at all. So what's the difference? He gets views either way. What are you doing with your views? Is there an ideological purpose for why Tucker Carlson cuts commentary in the way that he does? Certainly. I think there's definitely that. He is a WASP nationalist, so it could have been about that. You criticized Andrew Tate when he criticized the BBC journalist. He didn't criticize the BBC journalist. He cried about the BBC journalist asking him questions about like why he wrote certain things, and then he lied and said he didn't write them. What is this? How is this relevant in any way, shape, or form to what we're talking about right now?
That's where you're wrong, Mr. and Mrs. Cable News consumer. Vladimir Putin is exactly that sort of man, the sort of man who'd shoot himself to death in order to annoy you. We know this from the American media, which wasted no time this morning in accusing the Russians of sabotaging their own infrastructure.
I guess this is like, for him to come across as like even-keeled to a broader audience. I don't know.
Bill Kristol, the man who once told us that Saddam Hussein was responsible for 9/11, immediately denounced Putin as a war criminal and even more savagely compared him to Donald Trump. The rest of the pundit class made similar, clearly coordinated noises. Putin did it! Putin did it! And their reasoning was simple. Putin is evil, and evil people do evil things purely...
It's so funny, like, the anti-war right is like not a real constituency and like is not even actually anti-war. Okay, the anti-war right is never anti-war. They're anti this war. They're anti-unproductive wars, right? That means that there's still productive wars that they're on board with. So just never forget that. And ultimately, the military-industrial complex basically runs the show in this goddamn country. Okay, that's why, year over year, the discretionary funds given to the military continues to increase. That's why even when we had this debt ceiling conversation, which was totally fucking made up to begin with and never should have happened, neither party even touched the discretionary spending and actually were perfectly on board with increasing it. When you consider all of that, and then you come to the conclusion, or rather the recognition that no Republican person or president or politician is ever going to actually be legitimately anti-war. And Democrats certainly are also no longer anti-war. They don't even claim to be anti-war like they used to back in the day, at least. You realize that you're talking to no one. I guess you're not going to make any changes in the way that American politics works. Maybe you're talking to a broader audience, I guess, of people who are like, yeah, this doesn't make sense. Why are we doing this? You're not necessarily doing anything that is going to change policy in the way that you had the capacity to do so when you were Tucker Carlson on Fox News.
For the dark joy of being evil. In this specific case, Putin attacked himself, which is the most evil thing you can do, and therefore perfectly in character for a man that evil. That was their explanation. No one who's paid to cover these things seemed to entertain even the possibility it could have been the Ukrainians who did it. No chance of that. Ukraine, as you may have heard, is led by a man called Zelensky, and we can say for a dead certain fact that he was not involved. He couldn't have been. Zelensky is too decent for terrorism. Now, you see him on television, and it's true you might form a different impression. Sweaty and rat-like, a comedian turned oligarch, a persecutor of Christians, a friend of BlackRock. But don't
Damn, he's reading fucking Zil Disney to filth, though.
believe your own eyes. Actually, Mr. Zelensky is a very good man. The best, really. As George W. Bush once noted, he is our generation's Winston Churchill. Of all the people in the world, our shifty, dead-eyed Ukrainian friend in the tracksuit is uniquely incapable of blowing up a dam. He's literally a living saint, a man in whom there is no sin. That's why Lindsey Graham is so attracted to him. They're just two good people, hanging out together and being good. And like all good people, when they meet in person...
let's say Donald Trump wins tomorrow, okay? And he's the president, and he keeps giving literally all of the same exact weapons to Ukraine while simultaneously claiming that he's not, or whatever the fuck, right? In the media, but he absolutely continues to do so. What's Tucker going to do? Is he going to be like, wow, Donald Trump claimed that he was no longer going to arm the Ukrainian movement. He said that this war needed to come to an end. It seems like he's reneged on that promise. No, you're not going to fucking say that. You're just going to move on to some other shit. You're going to go back to talking about sexy ass M&Ms and how you want to fuck them. Called the Jewish man shifty. He's going full Rush Limbaugh. I think a lot of the times when he says stuff like that, he also called him a rat. A lot of times when Tucker Carlson says stuff like that, it's not necessarily to dog whistle specifically to the 8 Nazis that are going to be yeah, I don't like Zelensky because he's Jewish. It's more so that liberals will pick it up and then they will make a news story out of it. And then you can galvanize your base. I think he's doing that deliberately, baiting people to cover it and say, look how Tucker Carlson is anti-Semitic, so that he can turn around, which by the way, I think he is, for the record. I do think Tucker Carlson is anti-Semitic. I mean, he's a fascist, but I do think he's baiting people to cover it and have the ADL, which is an unpopular organization in general outside of liberal circles, to literally fucking go and say, whoa, what the fuck, why are you doing this? Just so that he can get more prominence. It's reaction baiting. You know what I mean?
They spend a lot of time talking about killing people and laughing like friends do. Here's the pair last week.
Free or die.
Free or die.
Now you are free.
Yes.
And we will be.
And the Russians are dying. It's the best money we've ever spent.
Thank you so much.
No, it's...
The Russians are dying. It's the best money we've ever spent, Graham says. A smile spreads across his thin, quivering lips as he forms the words.